Many dog owners eventually notice something strange. Their dog seems to treat one person in the house a little differently, and once you notice it, it's surprisingly hard to ignore. They might play with everyone in the house. They might accept food from different people, and they might happily greet anyone who walks through the door. But if you watch closely, many dog owners eventually notice something interesting. In most households, dogs tend to treat one person a little differently. You can see it in small, everyday behaviors. A quiet set of footsteps following you down the hallway. A quick glance toward you when something unexpected happens. Or the way they choose to lie near one person, even when nothing special is going on. Individually, these moments seem ordinary, but over time they reveal something surprisingly clear. Most dogs have one person they trust more than anyone else. And that trust usually shows up in very subtle, everyday behaviors. A dog's trust rarely forms in a single moment. Instead, it builds slowly through everyday experiences. The way someone moves around the house, how they react when something unexpected happens, and how they interact with the dog day after day. Over time, dogs begin to notice these patterns, and when that trust forms, it often shows up in very simple behaviors. Here are 7 things dogs often do only for the person they trust the most. One of the most common behaviors is when a dog quietly follows someone around the house. You stand up and leave the room. A few moments later, you might hear soft footsteps behind you. The dog isn't running toward you. They're not asking for attention. They simply follow you and settle somewhere nearby. Interestingly, this doesn't always happen with everyone in the house. In many homes, dogs may interact with several people, but when someone moves from room to room, they often follow one person more than the others. Sometimes that person isn't doing anything special at all. They might just be walking into the kitchen or sitting down somewhere else. The dog doesn't necessarily want anything. They simply feel more comfortable being near that person. And over time, this quiet following often becomes a normal part of the day. Dogs often show trust in other small ways too. Another behavior many dog owners notice is when a dog glances at someone before reacting to something. This usually happens during unexpected moments. Maybe there's a sudden noise in the house, something falls on the floor, or a door slams unexpectedly. The dog might lift their head right away. But before reacting further, many dogs will quickly look toward a specific person in the room. The moment usually lasts only a second or two, almost like a quick check-in. The dog is watching that person's reaction to understand what's happening. If that person stays calm, the dog often relaxes again just as quickly. What's interesting is that dogs don't always look at everyone the same way. In many homes, they tend to look toward the same person in situations like this. Many dog owners notice this behavior with their own dogs. Sometimes people only realize it after they start paying attention, and in more stressful moments, that trust can become even clearer. When small behaviors like these start appearing again and again, they're rarely random. And there are several other ways dogs quietly show deep trust toward one particular person. One of the clearest moments of trust happens when a dog feels frightened or unsure. Maybe there's a loud thunderstorm outside, a sudden noise in the house, or something unfamiliar appears in their environment. Dogs react to these situations in different ways. Some dogs hide, some become alert and start pacing around the room, but many dogs will move toward one specific person. They might walk over and sit beside them, lie down close by, or simply stay near them for a while. In those moments, what matters most isn't necessarily what the person does, it's their presence. For many dogs, being close to the person they trust helps them calm down much faster. And when dogs feel uncertain or scared, the person they move toward is often the one they trust the most. Dogs often show that same trust in quieter ways too. Another clear sign of trust is when a dog fully relaxes around someone. You'll often notice this during calm, quiet moments. The dog might lie on their side. Their legs stretch out comfortably. Their breathing becomes slow and steady. Sometimes they even roll onto their back and expose their belly. For a dog, that's a very vulnerable position. It's not something they usually do when they feel unsure about their surroundings. But when they're near someone they trust, many dogs seem to let their guard down completely. They simply lie there and rest. In moments like this, a dog's body language often reveals something very clear. They feel safe enough to relax around that person. And that sense of safety often appears in another everyday moment. Many dog owners also notice that their dog eventually chooses to sleep near one specific person. In most homes, dogs have several places where they could sleep: a comfortable spot on the couch, a dog bed in the corner of the room, or a quiet place somewhere else in the house. But over time, many dogs begin to move closer to one particular person. At first, they might sleep across the room. Then they start lying near your chair, or beside the bed, or simply in the same room as you. For dogs, sleep is one of their most vulnerable states. When they're sleeping deeply, they're far less aware of what's happening around them. Because of that, many dogs prefer to sleep near the person who makes them feel the safest, not because they were told to, and not because they were trained to, but because that person's presence feels familiar, calm, and reassuring. If you start paying attention, you may notice that many of these small behaviors begin to appear together. Another small behavior many dog owners notice is when a dog occasionally checks where you are. Even when they're resting in a room, a dog might suddenly lift their head. They look around for a moment, almost as if they're searching for someone. If they see that you're still nearby, they usually settle back down and relax. But if you leave the room, many dogs will get up and follow. Sometimes they walk quietly behind you. Sometimes they simply move to the next room and lie down again. What's interesting is that this behavior doesn't usually happen with everyone in the house. Dogs may feel comfortable around several people, but when it comes to keeping track of someone's location, they often pay closer attention to one particular person. For dogs, simply knowing where that person is can make the environment feel more predictable and secure. And dogs often show this connection in another quiet way. One of the quietest but most common behaviors is when a dog chooses to settle near you even when nothing interesting is going on. You might be reading a book, watching TV, or working quietly in the room. There's no food involved, no game being played, nothing exciting happening at all. And yet, the dog still chooses to lie down close to you. They might curl up and fall asleep, rest their head on the floor, or simply lie there, calmly watching the room. Sometimes they stay like that for quite a while. Moments like this often show something important. For many dogs, just being near the person they trust is comforting all by itself. Pattern recognition. When the behaviors start to connect. Any one of these behaviors by itself might not seem very significant. A dog following someone once or twice could just be curiosity. Sleeping near someone might simply depend on where the comfortable spots are. But when several of these behaviors appear together over time, a pattern often begins to form. A dog might quietly follow someone from room to room, sleep near that person at night, or look toward them when something unexpected happens. When several of these behaviors appear together, they usually reveal something deeper, a strong emotional bond between a dog and one particular person. When several of these behaviors appear together, they usually reveal a deeper bond between a dog and one particular person. Bridge. These behaviors usually point to one person. In many homes, these behaviors don't appear randomly. They tend to center around the same person, usually the person the dog feels the safest with, the one whose presence feels the most familiar, and the one they instinctively look to when something uncertain happens. Over time, that person becomes a stable point in the dog's world. Emotional closing. Dogs rarely express trust through big dramatic gestures. Instead, it often appears in quiet, everyday moments. The soft footsteps that follow you through the house. The times they choose to lie near you when the room is calm. Or the quick glance they give when they're trying to understand what's happening around them. Individually, these behaviors may seem simple, but for a dog, they often carry a deeper meaning. Sometimes they're simply the dog's way of saying, you are the person they trust the most in their world.